in this book, I really looked at sort of the long-term outcomes with antipsychotics. I looked at them with antidepressants. I looked at them with mood stabilizers and anti-anxiety. And then I looked at stimulants for kids. And one of the things that surprised me, that really sort of stunned me, was how the pattern does repeat itself, it's seemingly for every class of drugs, in which you see some degree of short-term symptom suppression over the short term. That's why they're declared effective. That's one thing you find. Two, you find over and over again that when people come off, especially abruptly, they'll often get a flare-up of symptoms that are actually quite severe. It's clear, though, that those are related, those are somewhat withdrawal related. And then third, what you do see is when you compare naturalistic outcomes, people who get off treatment or never go on treatment, to those who go on the drugs and stay on the drug, the unmedicated group long-term always does better as far as I can tell. That's one comparison. You can also see what sort of outcomes did we used to see, say, for depression, bipolar, psychosis. What do we see today? Those epidemiological studies. All the epidemiological studies show outcomes worse today than they were 40 years ago. I know that's surprising, but you see this over and over again. And maybe the most surprising thing is, actually in the literature, the leading experts in the field are raising red flags. They're going, why are our outcomes deteriorating so much? And they'll be saying, we think maybe it's the drugs. Maybe the drugs are causing this biological change in the brain that you can see people say make people more psychotic over time, or make people more depressed over time, or make people more anxious over time. So the surprising thing is the consistency of the literature when you look at long term, that you see this problem cropping up over and over again. The second, that you see people within the field saying, what is going on? Are these antidepressants depressogenic agents over the long term? You'll see those sort of things. So yeah, it's really a common problem that repeats like a refrain. It's surprising. I honestly don't know of any literature, and this is 50 years after using these medications, that show a long-term benefit. And one, I wrote this book, Anatomy of an Epidemic, that came out 18 months ago. It stirred up some controversy. If there were such literature, it would have been brought out now saying, hey, Whitaker missed these studies, and no one has pointed to that literature. It's really remarkable. I looked at the mainstream research. What did their own research tell us about those questions, about how they were the drugs were affecting people's lives over the long term? So the key here was, it wasn't an outside criticism. It was, okay, I'm going to take everything you say basically at face value, your diagnostic categories, all that, and we're just going to see, when you did your own studies to assess how it affected long-term functioning, what'd you find? So I'm just holding up their own literature, okay? And even though that makes some people quite angry, they do recognize it as their own literature, okay? And so that is why it's having some impact, is because even in the mainstream people, they have to say, this is our literature.